Well, with it being a few days since Prehistoric Planet 2 has come to an end, I figured it'd be a good time to kind of look at the entire show as a whole and just kind of see how like to see if it hit the correct chords or, if there were some things lacking. So yeah, let's get right into it. First, we'll talk about the CGI. Not the designs of the animals, that'll fall under our accuracy/speculation portion, but the CGI looks really good. Just like Season 1, this is probably the best that dinosaurs have ever looked on screen. They're incredibly detailed, from the scaly ones to the feathery ones. Even with the close-up shots, it looks like you're looking at a real animal. As well as having moments where they interact with the environment, like maybe a bush moves here, some dirt kicks up there, water splashes over there. It feels extremely grounded and feels based in realism. There weren't really many shots that looked off. In fact, the only one that I could really think of was the Shamosuchus scene. Those crocodiliforms kind of looked a little bit off to me as far as CGI goes. Their movements kind of lost a lot of their weight, and some of the detail just kind of looked off, especially when they kind of cut in between real life crocodile footage and the CGI models. Really, other than that, I didn't have too many complaints as far as CGI went. Just like Season 1, everything looked pretty much top notch, and this is just the best that dinosaurs have really ever looked on screen. Next up, we have the real meat and potatoes of it all, the accuracy and speculation. Now, I feel that as far as accuracy goes, it was kind of a step up in this season. I mean, there was a lot of things that were just primarily speculation in Season 1, like the kind of throat balloons that the Dreadnoughtus had, or of course certain behaviors that animals exhibited. And as far as Season 2 goes, a lot of the speculation does come from the behaviors, which is to be expected because, behaviors very rarely fossilize. Of course, we do have examples where behaviors are shown in dinosaurs, but even that is extremely limited. So you have to kind of think a little bit more creatively when it comes to portraying these animals in a realistic manner. And I think they did a good job as far as the behaviors go. A lot of it felt extremely grounded and like something that animals would really do, like a lot of the mating displays or the way animals react to certain times of year. Like with the Ostroraptor scene, there was, they mentioned that there's more fish in the waters in the summer months, and so kind of all of the Ostroraptors kind of show up in the same place trying to, catch as many fish as they possibly can. Something that reminds me of today's grizzly bears who follow the salmon migration. So I thought something like that was really cool, and again, something that just feels extremely grounded. Especially with our evidence that Ostroraptor did in fact eat fish. But a lot of what they portrayed was based in fact, and a lot of this was kind of supported in the little segments that they have at the end of each episode where they kind of show the facts, show the evidence, and how they got to a certain conclusion. Like the Hatzegopteryx hunting scene, that's something that we've speculated for a while and has a pretty good backing to it, or the Pachycephalosaurus fight, or the Triceratops fight. A lot of it was pretty good. Some of it kind of, like, speculation might go a little bit too far, depending on who you ask, like maybe the way that the Rexes hunt the Edmontosauruses. Let me be clear, this was the best Rex hunt that we've gotten on screen, I think. But, of course, a lot of it was kind of trap setting, which isn't something that's too common in nature today. I'm pretty sure it does happen once in a while, but not too frequent. And of course, there's really no way we can tell if T-Rex was able to set up that sort of, hunt. But of course, there are a few inaccuracies here and there. Some of the biggest are kind of like carried over from Season 1, like Velociraptor showing up at all. They have the logic that all of the animals that show up are from the Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous, but Velociraptor actually lived in the Campanian stage, which is the stage right before. I think that was mainly a thing done to kind of like hook audience members because obviously Velociraptor is extremely popular due to a certain franchise. So I think that's something that they really wanted in their show. So they had it in Season 1, and of course it came back in Season 2. On top of that, they show it exhibiting pack behaviors along with pack hunts. There's really no evidence of pack behaviors in dromaeosaurs. That of course falls under the speculation banner because we don't necessarily have evidence against it either. So, But all around accuracy was really good. A lot of things that were shown in a really good light, were shown in a very, I want to say, tasteful light. I mean, for the most part, when you see dinosaur documentaries, they do an emphasis on fighting and hunting because they know that's what people want to see. And while there is some of that in this show, it's kind of dialed all the way back to, a 6 or a 7 or even lower than that. They show more time, they spend more time kind of showing these animals do different things, like trying to catch flies, or a Beelzebufo trying to just simply get into a pool of water, but sauropods are in the way. You know, different scenarios that you don't really see. That's something that I kind of talked about a lot with my individual episode reviews, but you know, that's just something that I think really stands true with this show, and I think is one of the best parts of the show. Also, a little side note, I want to mention this. The Triceratops with the really long horns was actually a reference to Yoshi's trike, which is the Triceratops with the longest known recorded horns that we have. And they were pretty long. Like, if you look at these are really long. And this is only the bone core. Those would have been layered in keratin, which means that they would have been longer. So it's really cool that they included something like that. I didn't know that, and I have this commenter to thank. So yeah, that was really cool. Next up, we have improvements. How did Season 2 improve on Season 1? I think that it improved in a lot of ways. I've mentioned it a lot, but there was a little bit more of an emphasis on storytelling, because like the first season, they jumped all over the place. They tried to cram as many things as they could into a single episode. While some things took longer to wrap up than others, for the most part, you still had a lot going on in a single episode. With this one, it seemed like there were fewer segments, but more substance to those segments, if that makes sense. I could be completely wrong, I haven't exactly checked, but it just kind of felt like everything flowed a little bit more nicely. On top of that, a lot of creatures that kind of felt like they were missing from the first season were given a little bit more of a spotlight in Season 2. Like, it's called Prehistoric Planet, but in the first season we got a focus on pterosaurs, aquatic creatures, and dinosaurs, which I like to call the big three of the Mesozoic. Everybody recognizes those, everybody knows what those are, but there was also a ton of other animals that really didn't get featured. I mean, Beelzebufo did show up for a split second, but only to be, you know, one of the many animals that was a baby eater. While in this one, Beelzebufo shows up again, but gets its own little spotlight, essentially, as well as Cymosuchus and Adelatherium, a mammal and a crocodiliform, which definitely need the spotlight because, you know, a lot of these creatures existed in the Mesozoic. So seeing them get the spotlight in the way that they did was really cool. Specifically with Cymosuchus and Adelatherium, I kind of want to do their own dedicated video on why it's so great that they portrayed them, because they're both extremely interesting animals in their own right. They both were isolated to an island, that island of course being Madagascar, and so because of that they have a lot of attributes that are just simply different to, you know, most other things that we're used to when it comes to crocodiliforms and mammals. So I'll definitely be making a video about them because they deserve a lot more attention. So would I say the Prehistoric Planet improved with this one? I would indeed. I would say it improved. Again, there was a lot more focus on the facts with that whole section at the end, and they did have that in the first season, but they were decently short little segments that you had to go to a different tab in order to watch. Which, you know, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't choose to do that or didn't even know it existed. So actually placing it at the end of the episode while you're still watching it, you'll probably just kind of sit there and be like, oh yeah, okay, might as well watch this too. And then you'll get a little bit of the science of why they came to some of their conclusions. So I really like that addition, and again, that's a huge improvement. So yes, overall, Season 2 was an improvement over Season 1, which Season 1 was already great. Not perfect, but great. Season 2 is not perfect either, but it's still great. So the overall show and impact. Is it a good show? Will you benefit from watching it? Is it going to have the same impact that Season 1 had? I would say pretty much yes to all of these things. It is a very good show. You will get a lot from watching it. And will it have the same impact that Season 1 did? I think that it potentially could. I think that we might see these clips kind of float around all over the place. I mean, we already see a lot of them on YouTube. Of course, my recommended feed is probably different from most other people's, but I feel like I'm seeing a little bit more focus on Prehistoric Planet Season 2, because it just feels like there was a lot more that happened. A lot more interesting things that weren't necessarily dinosaur fights. And so I think that the general public will learn a lot from this season in particular, and I think that they'll gain a lot from it. Their worldview on prehistoric animals from the late Cretaceous, I feel, is going to expand simply from the additions of a few different animals, including like the birds. I forgot to mention that birds even show up in this with Hesperornis and Styginetta. So, you know, including things like that too, which, you know, birds are dinosaurs. They belong to a group of theropod dinosaurs, but having them in the same show I think was really cool, especially giving Hesperornis a spotlight like they did. And Hesperornis was a good one to show off because of how interesting it is in general. So yeah, focusing on these different creatures was a good move. Now, I'd love to talk about every single creature in this show, but I did, upon my rewatch of the show, I did a head count of every single different species that got even somewhat of a spotlight in the show, and there are 48 different species. Here they all are right now, if you want to read through them. There's no way I'll be able to cover everything in detail. I will probably make separate videos from some of these guys in the future. Again, I mentioned that I wanted to make a video on Simosuchus and Adeletherium. If you want a little bit of a spotlight on any of these animals that showed up in season 2, be sure to let me know because I'd love to talk more about them. But yeah, this was season 2 of Prehistoric Planet. Very good show. Not perfect, but very good. Again, huge improvement on season 1, and I think that anybody who chooses to watch it would enjoy it. Unless you only like monster fights, then you might not like it so much. But other than that, you will probably like the show. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and have an awesome day.